Well, welcome. We're here with another Tell Me a Story, brought to you by the Friends of the Sandwich Town Archives. What we're doing with this project is hopefully building a library of oral histories related to growing up in the town. We're interviewing many family members who have been here, frankly, for generations. And so after a while, hopefully we'll get a glimpse of what Sandwich was like in past generations. So today I have with me Mrs. Anita Caron Bangs. Hi, Anita. How are you?
Joan.
It's like I don't know her. I've known her my whole life. Well, Anita is going to help us and talk to us about not only her growing up in Sandwich, but also tell us some history of her parents and grandparents. Yeah. So why don't we start with some of your recollections of your grandparents. If they grew up in Sandwich, what did they do in Sandwich, how did they come to Sandwich, that type of thing.
Okay, I don't know how my father's parents came to Sandwich, but I know my father grew up in Sandwich, and his father had the boot shop on Jarvis Street, and my father's mother came from Canada.
Oh, she did? Okay.
Yes. And my mother's mom was born in Harwich, and married a man from Manomet named Alonzo Thomas, and they were married in, I don't know when they were married, but I know there were 5 children that they had. And when my mother's youngest sister was a baby, and my mom was 3, he passed away.
Oh, he did.
It was a bad train accident. And so my mom's mom moved the family down to her family in Barnstable, which is where they were living at the time. And Mom grew up in Barnstable.
So she did, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then she met my dad, and our story began.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But my mom's mom, she could recite the Wreck of the Hesperus.
Oh my gosh, now that's a long,
It was,
long.
and she had a wonderful memory. She was very hard of hearing. She was a very gentle woman, and she lived in a little cottage, well, not far from the Morrows on Route 6A.
Okay.
Jean Morrow.
Yes.
And it lived out and back there.
Okay.
And we could walk there from our house
And
go
visit your
Grammy.
grandma. Oh,
Yeah.
isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then she moved over from that cottage. She moved across the cow pasture over to a little cottage on my Aunt Mabel, who was my mother's younger sister. They had a little cottage in the back of their house that my grandmother moved into there.
Okay, so that was very. Your grandmother never remarried.
No, she did not.
So with the help of her parents, she brought those children up.
She did.
Yes.
Her parents passed away not too long. My mother didn't remember too much about them. Some.
Yes.
But not too much. And her mother sold pies and other baked goods. And in those days, when the children reached the age of 14, they had to quit school and go find work to help support the families to get them off welfare. And so by turn, and when my mother was, I think she was in 10th grade when she left school.
Left school because she had to. Yep. That was the expectation.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But she had many good friends in Barnstable.
Yes. Did she ever share with you where she worked, having to leave school at that early age?
At the age of 8, she was like a little helper at a boarding house in up by Buzzards Bay, Buttermilk Bay area.
Okay. Yep.
And she did that. And then one year when she was very young, this all happened before she was 9 or 10, they sent her to a relative's farm in Manomet to put some meat on her bones because she was so thin. And she was terrified of the cows.
Well, that was not a very good arrangement then.
No, it wasn't. But she used to tell us a story that she was had to take the cows down to the brook to water them, and she stuck her foot in the brook so that it would get wet, and she went running home, and she fell in the brook, so she couldn't do the cows. That's rewording a little bit.
But that got her out of the cow situation.
But I remember as a child her talking about nightmares that she had where the bull was chasing her.
Which might have been the case at one point.
Who knows?
Yes, right.
Who knows how your psyche works?
Yes.
So,
oh my
but
gosh.
we do remember those stories. And then when she was old enough and on her own, she also took care of a lady's family after school when she got a little bit older.
Yes.
And she'd go be a mother's helper with the children. And then from there it goes on to the telephone company and all of that.
So, but she started at 8 years old, working.
I
Yes.
think younger,
Even
but
younger.
I can't recall right at the moment.
Yes,
I
isn't
have
that
some
amazing?
stories written down at
Oh,
home.
I'm sure. Now, what about your dad?
Dad was sent to a boarding school up in a town in Canada, Chavezville, where I think he stayed there till he was in 8th grade. And he was the oldest. And then my Uncle Gene went up with him. And I'm not sure, but I think Lionel might have gone, but it was not for long because my grandmother, his mother, had a stroke after having twins.
Oh.
And Dad came home. They brought all the boys home. And my dad was kind of like a surrogate mom because my grandfather had the boot shop next door.
Sure.
And Dad was just kind of like taking care of the kids and making sure his mom had everything she needed and all that kind of stuff.
Being the oldest.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And till the day they all passed, they looked to my father for everything. They just.
His what? 5 other brothers.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had established, of course, that,
Yeah.
that he was there and he was
Yeah.
going to help them, and that remained the case.
Right, and when all that happened, they were living down. The house is not there anymore; it's been razed, and it was where the comfort station is
Oh,
in town, down in the little park there.
across from the town
right
hall?
next to that, I think.
Okay.
Or maybe right on the side. I don't know how much of the park usurped that part of the land. So they lived there, and then they moved to the house actually where you grew up, which is right on Jarvis Street next to the big block of apartments.
Yes.
And then, life went on, and he had to leave school at the age of 8th grade, I think, was his time that he left school to come home.
Yes.
And he did get his GED.
Afterwards.
Night school, yeah, and then he did all of his electrician licensing right through his master's through night school.
Through night school. It sort of piqued my interest that although they were living in Sandwich, they sent your father Edgar and the next oldest boy up to Canada, did you say?
Yeah.
To go to school.
Which is near the town or the town where his mother grew up.
Oh, so that is the reason, perhaps.
That was the impetus, so to speak,
Yes,
to get them
to do
going
that.
on that. Yeah,
I see.
because there was family up there.
I see, and he stayed with the
Yeah.
family while
Yeah.
he was, I see,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, and he worked just whatever job was available.
yes.
Because those were not such great financial times.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Right.
not at all.
And basketball used to be played, of which his brothers were all participants, and at the casino on School Street. And they also had roller skating there.
They did.
Yes.
So that was quite something.
Yeah, and my dad was one of the people that would kind of be a marshal or whatever you called them at the rink. And my mother and her friends would come from Barnstable and go skating, roller skating. And at one point, somebody knocked my mom down.
Oh,
Or bumped into her. I don't think it was intentional.
Sure.
It bumped into her and she fell. And my dad picked her up.
oh.
And on the story goes.
And
Here we are.
And that was it, yes.
Yeah, we used to love to hear them tell that story.
Yes, yes. How long, now, when did your parents marry, approximately? Do you know?
1934.
1934. Okay.
Yep.
Before the war. Yeah. Yeah.
And I have one of the pictures I brought today has a picture of my dad standing at a guardhouse at the foot of the Sagamore Bridge, it was getting close to being ready to use, but he was keeping traffic off it so they wouldn't go off.
Oh. Well, yes, well, let's talk a little bit about that. Your dad, well, let's back up a bit. You said that although he had to leave school when he was perhaps like,
I'd say
8th grade?
14,
Yes.
15, in that area, but it was 8th grade. That's
Yes.
what he always said, was 8th grade.
But he became a well-respected electrician in town and on the Cape.
He was,
Yes.
and he was very interested in serving the town as well.
Yes, he was.
And he did a lot for the town.
He had quite a lot to do with the construction of the bridge in terms of the electrical things on the bridge.
He provided the lighting for the people that worked on the bridge to work at night.
That was back like in the 1930s. I think it was completed in 1935.
Yeah.
Yes.
And his brother Gene, the next one down,
Yeah.
Provided the lighting on the other bridge.
Oh, no kidding.
We used to say Dad's bridge and Uncle Gene's bridge.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah, yeah.
So
that was really something. So I also want you to talk about a bit about his efforts with the Upper Cape Vocational School.
Oh, he loved it. He really wanted a trade school for people in our area. He was on the first committee and served many years as chairman of the committee as well, and getting that going. And they were all very proud of it, all the people that worked on that school. And I remember Dad, I must have been young high school area or so, maybe junior high, and he would go to Boston to fight for the cosmetology program at the school to have the students that graduated from that course to be able to be licensed from that course.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't know how long that held true, but he was successful in getting that to happen. They could leave that school and be licensed to go into cosmetology.
It's really quite something because, as you know, that school has just grown and grown and
Oh, it
grown.
has.
But he was such an important part of that getting started.
Yes. The library
Yeah.
up there is named for him.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Isn't that wonderful?
They
Yeah.
put a very nice portrait up there of him, and
Yes.
dedicated it that year that he was not doing well.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Now, your parents got married, I think you said in 1934. Where did they live?
Well, at one time, they lived in the house behind where we live right now.
Okay.
That was a duplex, and
where was that, Anita?
well, the house where they lived in was on Canary. What's the name of that?
Freeman?
Freeman, thank
Okay.
you. They lived on Freeman Street. I don't know if it's number 2 or 4, something like that.
Yep.
But Caleb Anderson now lives there.
Oh, yes.
And he's rebuilt
He's done
the
a
house.
wonderful
It's a
job
beautiful
restoring
house.
that, yes.
And they lived in that apartment there for a while, and then they found a job in Jamestown, Rhode Island, in doing some electrical work of some kind. So they moved there and they rented a cottage. And I think I was just born, and they went there for my first 6 months or so,
Oh, yes.
and then we came back.
And of course, they had the 2 boys, too. They
Right.
had,
Right, they had my brother, the 3 of us.
yes.
My 2 older brothers and myself. And when they bought the house that we're in now, 1940,
Okay.
and I was born in 43, so it didn't just happen overnight that it became a house. It was a garage.
Yes.
And
It was, you say, a garage.
It was.
Uh-huh.
And So they lived in, we call it Molly Hamlin's house, because that's who moved in after us. We left, but right where Caleb is now. I think that's when they lived there again, or I don't know what happened, except that they lived in the top floor of the house that you're in. I do know when they first got married.
Oh, when they first got married?
Maybe their first 2 children, or only their first child, was born while they were there.
In the Java Street house.
In the Java Street house.
Yes.
The second floor in the front corner on the right, and no refrigerator, so in the winter they'd hang the butter and milk out the window.
Oh, gosh.
And so at some point, they finished the house. They bought, that was a garage. They picked it up, and they did this with it first, and changed how it sat on the lot. And then they added on a square eat-in kitchen, and the garage itself became the living room and the nursery and the bedroom and the bathroom. That's all it was.
That's all it was. Well, you have shared with me prior to our chat here that they bought the garage, if you will, from Tom Kelleher.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I don't know too much about it.
Yeah.
Except that it was his garage / workshop, room for his vehicle and for him to build things in. And it was situated so that the gable end was facing on Harbor Street.
Okay.
And it was situated just a little bit further towards the boardwalk beach than it is now. And when my mother, before they began all the work on it, they picked it up and turned it 90 degrees so that it would face onto Harbor Street at that point.
So it actually would face onto Harbor Street, yes.
Right. And of course, I don't remember this. I was a babe.
Yeah. These are stories.
Right.
These are your parents.
These are my parents. What I remember my mom talking to me about, because
Yes.
I was a very curious little girl, and I would ask. And they lived in it like that for a while, and then they added on a little front porch that it wasn't a porch; it was an entry, and it went right into the kitchen. And they had 2 front doors.
2 front doors.
2.
Okay. Well, maybe the garage had to. The workshop.
I think what it was more like the front door was put there. I'm just guessing here.
Sure.
The front door, that's no longer there anymore, was put there as an entrance to the house. And then when they added on that first little small extension of the kitchen, they put a door there. So that's how we ended up, or maybe just the 2 doors were put there, I don't know.
Yeah.
There was no back entrance at the time. And that could be all it was, I don't know. But I remember that helping them, I'd be watching or something, or carrying bricks or whatever when they built the brick steps and things like that.
And when they built the foundation, that's quite a story. Can you?
I don't remember that.
No,
that
this
was
is
my mom telling me this story. That
Yes.
When they wanted to add on that square kitchen, they needed a foundation, and this was, I believe, it was after they did the turn of the house. They added on that kitchen, and but they needed a foundation for it because the foundation under the rest of the house was hand dug.
Sure.
And only went down 4 feet, and then they went with a foundation 3 feet above ground. Thank goodness, because of where the water comes sometimes. And so they needed a foundation, and I don't know if it was recent or how long it had been dismantled, but there used to be a granite post fence, granite post that supported black wrought iron fencing around. Some people, like I think you called it Fountain Park, and we've known it as McLaughlin Park.
Yes. Now that's right at the corner of.
Like up the block from us, right on the corner of Jarvis and Factory. And when they took the fence down, they just piled all those granite posts in one corner of it. and the man who built the house helped my dad, and the two of them went to the town fathers at the time and said, what's going to happen to those? And they said, oh, they're just piled there, we don't know.
Yeah.
And they said, you can have them if you can drag them. So Bob and my dad dragged them down the street, built the foundation out of those granite posts.
Isn't that something? What a neat story.
It is a cool story.
Yes. Yeah. The gentleman that they bought the workshop from, Tom Kelleher, he was quite a notable person in Sandwich. Actually, I wanted to touch on that just because he was so notable. And your parents having bought his workshop. His lifetime here in Sandwich was from 1869 to 1952, and the homestead was on Dewey Ave, which was further on down.
Yes, I don't
from
know
your house
actually where it was. So.
And he built. I just want to quickly say that he built not only the Corpus Christi Church on Java Street, but he also built the churches in the following towns: West Barnstable, Osterville, Onset, Hyannis, Pocasset, Buzzards Bay, and Sagamore. And amongst other things, he also built the H.T. Wing School.
Yes.
Yes. Which we're talking about.
The 27 building you're talking about.
The 27 building. What are we going to do with it now? Tom Kelleher built that. Yes. Yeah.
That's cool. I
So
remember when I first started working as a teacher at that building, I used to go in the door and say, I am so lucky to be working here and know the history of this town, and it was awesome.
Yes.
I loved going to work.
Yes. So you taught in that school for some period of time.
I started working there in 1980.
Yep.
And then I moved in 91. I moved out to the Oak Ridge School when that one was opening. And I taught there until 2001.
What did you teach?
Physical education. I had a lot of kids in this town.
So let's maybe go back to your living in the house on Harbor Street and in what we have come to call Chavezville. What did you do as children? What did you do to keep busy?
Oh, we had the most wonderful childhood. There were kids, and we just, at McLaughlin Park, where those granite stones came from.
Sure.
Every day. There was a gang of kids there, and if you wanted to do something, you just went up there, and there'd be somebody there, and you'd play. Pick up baseball. That's where I learned to play football, and later in my life taught it. We'd be waiting for the bus at the corner of Factory and Jarvis Street. We'd be waiting for the bus at school, and if it had snow on the ground, we'd be playing fox and geese tag in the park, waiting for the bus.
Yeah.
And we always had a great time. But everybody on the bay side of 6A would be there, and some people from further uptown too.
Yeah.
But it was just all of our neighborhood, which is Chavezville, basically.
Yeah.
And there was always something to do, and if it was summertime, we weren't at the park in the daytime because we were down at the boardwalk. Jumping off.
That boardwalk has quite a history, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, doesn't
yes.
it?
Yeah.
You've been there too.
Oh, yes. We interviewed the Mielik sisters a few days ago, and they talked about their fun, at the...
They were at the park.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, we had great times.
Yes. Did you jump off the boardwalk, like...
Every day.
Now, I want to make sure, I know we went over this, but I want to make sure, just for posterity, that we name the various names of your ancestors. Obviously, your father's name was Edgar Caron.
Correct.
Your mother's maiden name
was Thomas.
Okay. And she grew up in Plymouth. No, in Barnstable.
In Barnstable, yes. And she was born in a little house across the canal, but the canal wasn't quite like it is now.
Yeah.
So, it was, 3 years after she was born that they moved to Barnstable, so that's how
So
we got
that
in.
would have been in the
So,
early 1900s that your mom would
My
have
mom
been.
was born 1910.
1910, yep, yep.
And her mom was born in Harwich. I don't know the year.
Mm-hmm.
And her maiden name was Chase,
Ah,
which is
okay.
a prominent name in that part of the Cape.
yes it is. Yes
Yeah.
it is, yeah.
And she used to tell me, Grammy,
Yep.
used to tell me stories about going to the cliffs at the beach and seeing shipwrecks.
Oh.
And after winter storms, and one of the stories that I remember, obviously because it was so shocking, was that she saw sailors frozen to the yardarms.
Wow.
So those shipwrecks were part of her life.
Yes, yes.
She was 18, let me see, I'd say 1880s,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
maybe even 70s.
Yeah. They obviously weren't able to rescue all of the
No, they
shipwrecked people, of
couldn't.
course.
No.
Yes.
And then, of course, Phil's ancestors came along at the lifeboat stations,
Yes.
which
Your
turned into the Coast Guard.
Yes, your husband,
Yeah.
Philip Bangs,
Yeah.
his father was
Right.
in the Coast Guard for
Right.
years and years.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
sort of like in the family.
Yes.
Well, that's good because we want to make sure that we understand. So you have Thomas and Chase
Right.
in your mother's side.
Right.
Yep, and obviously on your father's side, the Caron name.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah. Now, getting back again to school time for you and your siblings. How many siblings do you have?
There were 6 of us. One passed away as a little girl. And there's still 4 of us.
And there's still 4 of you.
Yeah. But we've spread out. But until my mother passed away, we were mostly all right here in the area,
Yes.
in Sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Very close family, Anita.
yes,
Yes.
we were.
Yeah.
We are.
Yes.
And we loved visiting with our relatives. That was a Sunday activity. Go visit the relatives, play games with them in their yards, and
Just about every Sunday.
Yeah, and both my mom and dad came from big families,
Yep.
so there were lots of us.
Yes. Yeah. How about school? Not so much teaching. That was very interesting to hear about. You walking into the
Yeah.
H.T. Wing School, having graduated from
Yeah.
there. How about growing up and going to the school as a student? Do you have any memories of that you could share?
Well, I remember that the old brick section was what I first went to as first grade. No kindergarten then. My kindergarten was in a little house down on Main Street. And the first 6 grades were on the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
And the second 6 grades were on the top floor and a couple of places in the cellar, notably the shop, because in those days there was shop for carpentry and that kind of thing. The cafeteria was down there.
Yep. So they had really shop for the boys, and really it was sort of for the boys in those days.
And it was.
And they had home ec, didn't they, for the...
Home ec I did have. But it wasn't, it was not a big part of my schooling because I got it at home.
Yes, your mom was quite a seamstress.
Yes, she is. And her mom was too.
Was she?
Yes,
Yeah.
she would take hand-me-downs and things
Yep.
and make them into, take them apart and then remake them into clothes for her children. And I remember my mom zipping along on that sewing machine at midnight hours,
Yes.
making clothes or costumes because we were in dancing lessons and things. And I think I just fell in love with it because of her and her love of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do quite a bit of
I like any kind of sewing.
Yeah. Yeah. What about your sisters? Now you had 2 sisters. You have 2 sisters.
Yes,
Yes.
Jan is 1 year younger.
Yep.
She is not married, and she lives in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
And she's an artist, and she's very good.
Yes.
She's very good.
Yes.
And my youngest sister, Valerie, lives right next door to me, and she is working currently and has been there for almost 20 years, I think, working over at the campus at Huey. And she is director of housing and assistant to the dean over there, and she likes her work very much.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Growing up, did you have chores? Did you have things that you had to do in helping the family out?
Yeah, we all pitched in. We were a team. And sometimes, I used to make a deal with my mom and dad that if I didn't have to wash dishes, I'd go out and mow the lawn.
Dishes were not your thing.
Dishes were not my thing. And I loved working out in the yard.
You
loved
did?
it, yes. Let's see, and chores, I don't remember them as chores, as just, I did things. Although I do remember, once I learned how to iron, I had a little ironing board about this big when I was a very little girl. And when my mom was ironing, she'd be ironing clothes for the family, because in those days we had to iron.
Yes.
And I'd be beside her, and I would be ironing my dad's work handkerchiefs and dress handkerchiefs, because they were just flat, and I could iron them on my little, with my little irons.
Alongside your mom.
Yes. So that grew into, because I enjoyed the ironing, you'd start with something that looks terrible, and you make it look into something that's quite nice looking.
And you can be proud of. I did that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I remember doing my brother's corduroy shirts. They were not fun, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So, but just generally, we all did everything.
Yes. Yeah, there was no questioning about helping out.
No,
You know, what needed to be
no
done.
designated little list of chores that were hers or his,
Yes.
and things like that.
Yes, yeah. Now, when did you graduate from high school?
We graduated in 1961. We were the first class to graduate from the wing school new gym. New gym.
The new gym, which is still there, of
It's
course.
still there.
But it was new at that point. Okay.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yep.
It had broken through the basement wall into the hallway by the gym there, and that's where we graduated from.
In the gym.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
How many in your graduating class?
27. And when we were in first grade, they didn't know what they were going to do with all of us, because we were the biggest class since ever. The class before us were 9s and 11s and 15s, and the classes after us were not that small, but smaller than ours. So it was like, oh, where are we going to put them all when we arrived at first grade?
Yes. Yeah, they had to start thinking about, expanding at that point. Yeah. That was, I mean, and nowadays they talk, what are the 200 or 300, of course.
Oh,
in
they're
graduating
right
classes.
around 200, I think.
Yes, yeah. But that was in those days. That was large. Now, you talked about the gym. Now I think I know that you graduated from Bridgeport.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Yeah.
University of Bridgeport, Arnold College Division.
And your major?
My major was physical education.
Yeah.
And it was Springfield College was the first physical education. That's Springfield, Massachusetts. Arnold College was the second that had that major offered. And they were well known. And I went to school originally, college, out in Midwest and on the Mississippi River. And after 2 years, they didn't have a physical education. There was a physical education major, but there were not associated specialty classes. Like I would take softball with any old buddy that was taking softball.
I see.
Yep. and the prof would say to me, Anita, go work with them on throwing the ball, something similar, something like that.
Certainly, yep.
Yeah, and so after 2 years, I transferred to the University of Bridgeport.
Did you play sports in school, at the H.T. Wing School?
At H.T. Wing, I was on the basketball team and a cheerleader. That's all they had for us little ladies.
Yeah. No other sport.
No.
No.
And when I was a senior, I believe it was a senior, they started softball.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
For the girls, yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't really care for softball, so I didn't go out for the team.
Well, there you go.
And I went into lunch one day, and Mr. Zion was having his lunch at the same time. He says, "Oh, Anita," he says, "you're catching today at the game." I don't know if it was today,
Yeah.
but you're going to catch at our first game. And in those days, it was a matter of you respected your elders, and if they told you to do something, you did it. And that's what happened. I was the catcher.
And it started like that.
It
Yes.
did,
Yes.
and I got through the year, and then I graduated.
So you only had to do it 1 year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Mr. Zion that you spoke of.
Oh, we loved him.
Yes. Quite a few of the people that we've interviewed that graduated from H. Ewing School have talked about him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is an exceptionally caring and, I want to say gentleman, but I don't know that that's the right term. But he just, you couldn't not like him. He was just special. And just everybody, he treated us girls, we always said he's a great coach. And he could have coached anything because he had that coaching uniqueness.
Yes. You sort of wanted to.
You wanted to do what he wanted you to do,
Yeah.
because you knew it was the right thing to do, or the best way to do it.
Yeah. And you never questioned it.
Never,
Yeah.
never.
Yeah. Have any other favorite teachers?
Oh my goodness. I loved Miss Benz in my second grade. Mrs. Snow was a fifth grade teacher. I loved her. High school, I don't know. Mr. Zion, of course, because
Yes.
he was
taught,
a teacher
too,
as
yes.
well. There was a teacher named Arthur O'Leary. He expected a lot of us, but he let us be kids too. I remember Mr. Baker, he coached the soccer team for a little while, I think, or basketball, one of those for the boys. Other than that, I don't, just nothing comes to mind.
Do you feel, when you went off to college, did you feel you were well prepared after having gone through?
Academically, yes.
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 Yeah.
But it was a long way from home.
Yes.
But I was well prepared. We always felt that about Sandwich. In our class, we had people accepted at Harvard, Worcester Polytech, MIT. We had some, kids went on and were very successful, whether they went into trades or, academics.
Yeah.
You know.
But you spoke of, you did say you qualified it. Academically, you felt you were ready. What about going from a small town?
I was homesick.
Yes, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I was very fortunate in college as well, because I met a girl there. We were lifelong friends. And the first year I was out at school, I wasn't supposed to come home for Thanksgiving because it was a long way.
Yes.
And
cost.
yeah, but I was homesick, so they let me come home.
Ah.
But then of course I came home for the Christmas holiday, but after that, for the shorter vacations and long weekends, I would go to her house, and I became part of her family.
Oh,
and
yes.
yeah, we just stayed very good friends.
And you have to this day.
Well, yes, she's not with us anymore, but
dear.
Until she passed.
Yes.
Yeah.
You still kept
Oh yeah,
up.
I went out when she passed. I went out for her
nice.
memorial.
Yeah. I did a little background work. I've known you my whole life, but I did do a little background work, which I like to do when we're sitting and chatting with different townspeople. And so that I know that I found an article in the Cape Cod Times. And so I know that you were crowned Miss Sandwich in 1964.
Yes.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well,
That must have
the
been
town
quite
was
something.
celebrating its 325th anniversary.
Mhm.
And actually, my dad was on the committee at the time, designing it, and I think he did that because his father was on the 300th committee.
Oh, isn't that something?
And I was on the 350th, as a matter of fact. So we carried it as far that way as that. But what happened was they decided to have a Miss Sandwich contest in corroboration with the 50th anniversary of the Cape Cod Canal. And we'd be sending a representative of Sandwich to their celebration that way. And it was tied to a $100 scholarship.
Oh, that's a lot of money in those days.
Yes, it was. It bought a lot of my books. And in those days, the books weren't quite as bad as they are now, expense-wise. So I thought I would try for a scholarship.
Good for you.
And there were, I don't know, 6 or 7 of us. And that's how it happened.
What was the what did it entail? What did you do?
I really don't remember a lot of it. I do remember that I didn't have I had to have a long dress.
Oh, yes.
And I didn't own one. And so my mother and I altered one of my sisters to make it a little longer for me and fit me better. And that's what I wore for that. I remember that I had to get my hair permed in those days.
Yeah,
you did that at home.
Yes.
A lot. And then I just did whatever they told me. And
Yeah,
we had to answer questions. It was sort of styled after. I don't remember being in bathing suit, but I may have been, because in those days, you know, it was no big deal.
No, you were in bathing suit most
Every
of the
day,
summer.
all summer long. And then we had to answer questions.
So were you in a parade, or?
Yeah, the 325th anniversary parade happened, I believe, in August.
Okay.
And I remember Governor Volpe was here, but also the previous Governor Peabody,
Oh, how nice.
or vice versa.
Uh-huh.
I get
In the parade, how
the
nice.
order. They were on the stand, and I was on a float that
Oh, you were?
somebody had built a float that had the Hoxie House, the grist mill on it with the wheel and
A
everything.
replica, yeah.
Yeah, and that was what that's what I went to the Cape Cod Canal on. And I think for the parade and sandwich, I think I was just on the boot of a convertible car sitting there.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah. How neat.
It was.
Yeah. For a young woman, you know, to go through. Yeah.
I've been keeping that a big secret all these years.
Your secret is blown. You should be proud of that. Are there any stories or any other kind of recollections that you would like to share that we haven't touched on?
Phil was director of recreation at that time. And we thought it would be a great idea to have a scavenger hunt for the recreation group of kids that he provided for, activities for. So we were going to hide clues around the walking area of downtown.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
And that included part of Town Neck. And so the night before, we were going to get up early in the morning to go put these clues out.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. And the night before, we put the 2 kids in their camp. Actually, we put them on the big bed in the back of the camp because we were going to be riding in the front. We got up early in the morning with our little package of clues, and we went riding everywhere around town within the walking area that it was going to be, and put a little clue here and a little, and the clues told you where to go look for this and go look for that, or you had to pick up something and show up at the end of the clue with it.
Oh, neat.
At the end of the hunt. And at one point over in Town Neck, we had the bus parked on one side of the road, and up the road on the wrong side for them, but we were on the right side, came a cruiser.
Okay.
And it was Clyde Gill. And he got out of the car and he says, you know, down at the station, we got a call in from somebody saying that there were suspicious-looking hippies driving around the neighborhood. And Clyde says, they also told him that there was a Volkswagen bus.
Yeah.
Clyde says, I think I know who that is. I'll go see to that one. Because at the time, I had very long hair.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, it was like early in the morning. And I didn't worry about fashioning my hair at that time. I just let it hang. And we'd be getting in the car and jumping out and in.
Put in another, yes.
So I love the story about Clyde.
Oh, Anita, isn't that
That was
funny?
a funny one.
Oh, and of course, Clyde Gill.
Right, and that wasn't, I mean, our kids, we already had our kids, and we got married in '64, so they were probably, I don't know, 7 or 8, whatever.
Sure.
And, but Phil, that was one of the activities that Phil did when he was director of rec.
I bet you Clyde Gill still kids you about that.
Oh, he remembers it.
Yes, I'm sure.
But it was so nice. That's the kind of town we had. Was everybody knew everybody, and we took care of each other, and it was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got. Let's see. I remember when the Mayflower. That was the replica. That it's a Plymouth. Well, it's not a Plymouth right now, but the one they have up there. I remember its maiden voyage. It was a gift from England, and it was a maiden voyage from England to this area. It was going to be placed in Plymouth at the time. I remember on that voyage, it stopped in the canal.
Oh.
And we got pictures of it right next to the bulkhead.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Let's see. I remember Fred Earle's house, which we always called Fred Earle's. It was a house, big white house on the way to the boardwalk.
Yeah.
I remember it coming down the road, down Factory Street. It probably came across Jarvis and down Factory Street in 2 halves.
Oh my gosh.
It was a house that was going to be raised over by the marina. And Fred Earle says, well, I'll buy it, move it. So he did. And that's where it came from. And I remember it coming, it was a big deal. We sat on the front step and watched that one. Yep.
And that was their family home with all the children
always.
growing up.
Oh my gosh, yes. And
Yes.
we would, in those, my parents were always adding on or remodeling, and same with his folks.
Yes.
There was pieces of lumber that couldn't be used or were on hold for a while or something. We built huts out, we called them huts, in the backyard of his house out there.
Yeah. He was quite a wonderful man, wasn't he, Fred Earle?
He was.
Yes.
And just always had a smile for you and was very nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Helped a lot of people out in Sandwich.
Yes, he did.
With his fuel oil business.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he certainly did.
Yep.
Yep. So that was, and did you have any recollections of his, he always, as I remember, he always had German Shepherd dogs.
Oh yeah.
Always.
When he lost one, let's say he lost King.
Yeah.
The next one would be Prince. When he lost Prince, the next one would be King. When he lost King, the next one would be Prince. I remember him telling me that story. I don't know if it's true or not, but he told me that story and I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I think it is. It's probably true.
He was fun. The square dances, of course, you remember.
Oh, yes. Yes, let's talk about that.
Every Monday night, they'd close off Java Street at the end there where the little island is, and Freddie Bunker would put his little stage on sawhorses up there and call square dances. But for the first 2 hours, it was for kids.
Yes.
And he'd do little dances with kids. And I learned to dance there. 7 Jumps is the name of it. Why do I remember that? Because I taught first and second graders the same dance when I was teaching.
Oh, did you really? You brought it through all those years?
I did.
Yes.
And I loved it. And everybody, every class I ever taught it to, even the ones in Connecticut when I was student teaching, they all loved it.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yes. How about, remember the Hokey Pokey?
I certainly do.
Oh, remember
the Hokey Pokey. And then square dances, there was the same, he had friends that were square dancers, and they'd all be showing up there in Sandwich at the square.
With their square dancing
Absolutely.
uniforms on?
Yeah.
Oh, they were so gay and
Yeah.
so colorful.
My
yes.
mother made us all a square dance dress.
Oh, yeah, that was such entertainment.
It was.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
It
yep.
was.
And also to speak of your brother and sister-in-law.
Two's Country.
Yes.
Yep. They're currently living in Daytona Beach, and they have a place up in New Hampshire. I can't think of the name of the town right now, but it's right next to Moultonborough. It's in that area, that over there on the east side of Lake Winnipesaukee. And they come up and spend summers up there. And
I can remember them. They'd be on the stage. That would be Jerry Caron,
Yep.
your older brother, and Betty Bryden Caron.
Right.
And they used to sing just wonderful country music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a picture in the book. I don't know if they took a picture of it, but I have a picture of my uncle standing at the fence in our front yard.
Mm-hmm.
And behind him, there was nothing but field, except for a house way back. And at the time, it was a log cabin style. It wasn't a log cabin, but it had siding that made it look like that.
Pretty primitive.
And that's where Betty Bryden and Jerry Caron got to know each other, because Betty Bryden lived there, and we lived, of course, within sight of the house, practically.
Yes, they could see each other. Yes, yeah, from their houses.
Yeah.
Yes,
They lived in the same neighborhood, went to the same school.
Isn't that something? Yes, yeah, and still together.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we talked quite a few weeks ago now? You told me something I can't quite. It was a story about that there were fishing weirs down. Tell that story if you remember.
The Cape Cod Bay used to have fishing weirs in it, with mackerel fishing when the mackerel were in.
Yes.
And my uncle, who lived down the street, married my mother's younger sister, Bob Morrow, would go out on the fishing boat to get the mackerel out of the weirs, and they'd find tuna in the weirs. And tuna were bad because they would tear the weirs and they'd have to be mended. So what they would do is they'd go out fishing with their shotgun or whatever kind of gun it was, and shoot the tuna and then haul them in and sell the tuna for the meat as well. And my dad has a 16mm film, I still have it, of hauling the tuna in onto the boat deck.
Got to find that film.
Oh, I know exactly where it is, but you know.
Isn't that something? Yeah, and so they would sell the tuna too to a restaurant in town or whatever.
I don't know what they did with them. I was too young at the time, you know.
But isn't that something?
But
with a shotgun.
Yeah, and I only probably remember it. I remember the weirs, but I probably only remember that issue about the tuna tearing up the nets and pulling them on the deck because of that movie. Because my dad went out with him one time with his camera, which at the time was a 16mm.
and took a movie camera picture of them doing that.
Yes.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. In those days, it was so do what you can with what you've got and use it again and again if you can. Make the best of it.
Yeah.
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 And they did.
And they did. Yes.
Yeah. But I think I don't really have any great stories.
Oh, those are great stories. Great stories. Well, I want to thank you so much, Anita.
Well, you're very welcome.
And it is just so wonderful to hear these stories. And as I said before, as we start to build up a library of the various townspeople, the long-term townspeople who have lived here long-term, but also can tell us stories of their parents and grandparents. So that sometimes brings us back, into the early 1800s, the mid-1800s.
Yeah.
I think we start to get a flavor, of what it was like.
Sandwich was like.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
everybody knew everybody.
Yes, yeah. And that's our goal, so it doesn't get lost.
And I still identify a lot of the houses in my neighborhood. by the McQuaid house and the Roncarati house, because I delivered papers to them all when I was in 5th grade.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's still those houses.
Yes, even though they've changed
Yeah.
hands probably 20
Yep.
times, but they're still.
Exactly. Elizabeth's house, Bob Nokel's house. I can go right down the street and name them all. Of course, nobody's alive or living there anymore.
Yes, but you're exactly right. But if any of them had any troubles or any problems or anything like
Yep.
that, the whole town, the whole
Absolutely.
area got
I remember
together.
my dad going out after hurricanes and the electricity was out. I remember him going out with his mobile generator, and he put it on a little while at Russell's Market.
Thank you.
And let them get their freezers going, and then he'd go down to Alvezi's at the other end.
Yep.
And as he always told my mother, you go around to all the grocery stores in Sandwich and take turns every week.
Yes.
And,
Yep.
you know, he was a believer that if you trade in town, you trade in
shop
town.
You shop in town.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I remember him doing that with, and I remember trees on our street being huge elm trees being down. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that way that my mom and dad were like that, they passed on to us. If somebody could use a hand, lend a hand.
Yeah.
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 And and you know, we still have that a lot. It's just that it's not as noticeable because we're so much bigger.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's a nice time to grow up.
It was
Yes, and
a
nice,
wonderful
and a
time
nice
to
time
grow
to grow
up.
up in.
Yep.
Well,
Was.
thank you very much, Anita.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for joining us. And look for us to be videotaping more Tell Me Your Stories as the future presents. Thank you very much.